Up to about 3 years ago, I actually used to be a keyboard enthusiast. Like, I would know all the switch types and whatnot, and I even had a mechanical keyboard, a cheap one, mind you. But I realized at some point that the hobby was increasingly superficial, and I'm sorry to all you keyboard enthusiasts out there, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of the hobby seems to be just the actual purchase satisfaction of the item, keycaps, keyboard itself, whatever, and not actually using it. Like a concerningly small amount of people who buy these keyboards actually use them. And I think this whole performative hobby spending has been around since hobbies as a concept. People who spend too much on art equipment and people who buy all these like expensive bicycles and never use them. But like recently, it's becoming really bad with social media. I feel, or maybe it's just more televised, and that could be part of it. But another more niche and perhaps less talked about one is the whole like studying and productivity hobby, right? It's not a hobby in the traditional sense because there is no fixed activity attached to it, um, but it is very much a hobby. These people who have their Pomodoro timers and their cool desk lamps, and they have their MacBook set up for productivity, and they have all these shortcuts, and they have all these nice, cool Japanese markers and whatnot for note taking, and their like expensive bougie um, notepads and whatnot, and it's all cool. I like stationery. Like, why do you think I write with Copic markers, right? Sorry, micron markers. Also, I can't recommend these enough. These are great. But the problem is that at some point, like, is the satisfaction just buying them? Like, is that it? Because there's so many minute knickknacks that come with the productivity hobby, right? Especially like on like the coding side of things or in like the studying side of things, I see people buying old ass ThinkPads and like restore them just to never really touch them, or they have these cool custom Linux installations that are like riced out, but you know, ultimately don't lead to much usage. And then for like the studying side of things, people buy they have these like aesthetic live streams. I think the whole study with me genre really boomed around COVID, and I think was um, perfected by people like actually that I watched myself, like Jakey Wan. Shout out by the way, cool YouTuber. But the problem is, I mean, that at some point the hobby becomes more about the satisfaction of the purchase of the object and not the activity itself. Because, well, for studying for 8 hours a day and like doing Pomodoro and whatnot takes actual effort, but buying a cool, nifty agenda or a notebook or a pen or whatever takes only money, not any effort, and makes you feel like you did it. It was like, wow, look at me being all productive, right? I'm gonna be studying my butt off. But in reality, no. Most of the time, no, unfortunately. And this is with other hobbies as well. All you keyboard hobbyists, not typing enough. And I'm not here to criticize any hobbies, guys, but just like in my video about home labbing, people spend too much money on these, guys. I mean, um, my rule of thumb, I mean, look, I'm actually guilty of having spent a bit too much money on certain hobbies. For example, I spent about 80 bucks on a XLR microphone before I knew how to set it up properly. And years later, I'm back to using my Apple EarPods. Um, but the fact of the matter is that the rule of thumb that you should go with is if you start out the hobby and you get to some skill level and you are limited at that point by the resources and the money you spent on it, then you should spend more. But until that point, as like the starting line, don't spend any money on it. Like for example, I've actually like applied this to myself recently. I have been trying to learn digital music making. Me and my bestie have actually been making music together for several years. Hi, Leah. Um, but I figured, I can't be the singer and they can't be exclusively the actual player of the music. I should learn as well, and hopefully, I'll be better at composing and coming up with songs in the first place. Well, it is tough, and the it's really enticing to buy a nice nifty keyboard or MIDI controller to play on. But I said no, Geiger, you will not do that. You will play on your laptop keyboard in GarageBand until you become good enough to the point where you're limited by the laptop keyboard, at which point you can consider buying a MIDI controller. And that's what more people should do in their lives. Not for look, I have no horse in the race personally, okay? But two things: climate. Let's consume less, everyone, okay? Consumerism is bad for the environment. And secondly, your own wallet, guys. That money could be spent on other stuff and other hobbies, perhaps. Um, Entirely too many people. For example, I had a acquaintance of mine back in high school who was really into cameras and photography, but I would ask him like, "Hey, can I like see like your photography? Like I'm interested, like your social media or like portfolio or whatever." And he was like, "No, no, like I don't like actually do much photography," but he was really into cameras, and I think that's positive. Being into like the hardware side of cameras and whatnot is really cool. But he spent like 600-800 bucks on like a DSLR like camera and a lens for it and filters. I think it was a Sony cam, and that's cool and all. And I'm glad that he got what he wanted. But again, um, I wish perhaps he dabbled in the hobby of photography and cameras and whatnot um, on a lower budget level, and then push himself um, far enough that the camera that he was using was the limitation, right? Maybe he could have started with a phone camera and then see how far that took him, or maybe like a small cheapo digital cam, and then upgrade to like a full professional DSLR. I mean, look, maybe the guy bought the DSLR and then went on to take it ridiculously good pictures. I don't know. I never followed up. But the point is, just like with home labbing, which I talked about, um, hobbies, I mean, they can be monetized just like anything else, but don't let companies take advantage of your, um, what do you call it? Your reward mechanism, because your brain, for example, when you're planning something, just the planning portion of it actually gives you the same sort of chemicals that you get by finishing the task. This is not true for everyone, obviously, but for some people it is, me included. So that's why, for example, you'll get that burst of motivation to like clean your room at like 3 a.m., right? And like, I'm gonna turn my life around. I'm gonna clean my room. I'm gonna get my chores done. I'm gonna win. And then you wake up and you are like, whatever. And that's what happens with a lot of these hobbies is where like the gratification of buying the object for the hobby ends up giving you the same sort of feedback mentally as doing and actually engaging with the hobby. So yeah, don't let yourself be taken advantage of. Do all the hobbies you want: music, sports, art, anything you have the access to. Get out there and experience things, and don't let money hold you back. See ya.